We could go ahead and call our meeting to order, please. If I could ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence, and then we'll ask Mr. Stone to lead us in the pledge of the flag. Pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Shall we call the roll?
Yes. Mrs. Singer Eardley.
Here.
Mr. Lusby.
Here.
Mrs. Lusby Mitchell.
Here.
Mrs. Tingle Saint. Here. Mr. Showalter.
Here.
Mr. Stone.
Here.
Mrs. Tackett. Here. Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Good. Well, we at least have a quorum, don't we? And we have a bunch of guests with us tonight. And we'll get to those guests just as soon as we approve minutes and pay bills and do things of that nature. Each of you have a copy of the minutes of our last meeting, February the 10th. If you'd like to take a moment to look those over for any corrections or additions.
Take a motion for approval, Mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
And second, if there are no corrections, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good, minutes are approved, thank you. Each of you should have received a copy of our latest check register with your council packets, if you could indicate if you received those. Thank you. Okay. To the portion of our agenda for public comments, and that's when our guest will be recognized. We have the council, we have the privilege tonight of having two different groups with us, each with a proclamation that they're going to address the council, and then we'll take the proclamation for their particular cause. But first, we have the Scott County FFA. Please come up. Or they're going to let you do it by yourself, huh? Oh, okay.
First and foremost, thank you for having us here today. We're from Scott County FFA. I'm Ella Roberts. I'm the president. And then we have Emma Sherman, the secretary, Riley Grove, the vice president, Kelly Bevins, the reporter, Hunter Linville, the treasurer, and then Lee Wash is the committee chair. The FFA is an agricultural organization that focuses on building leaders. We strive to better our members, school, and community through conferences, community service, and agricultural awareness. This week, we celebrate FFA Week in order to raise awareness about the role of the National FFA organization and the development of agriculture's future leaders. So we have our proclamation for Mr. Prather to sign.
And what we'll do is this the same, Arlene?
I don't believe it is.
Okay, because what council, we prepared a resolution for you as well.
Thank you.
And would be glad to, you can read them both if you want, but.
Whatever y'all want.
Yeah.
Well, they presented theirs, we'll read theirs, and we'll show them what we got for them.
There you go.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. National FFA Week Proclamation. Whereas FFA and agricultural education provide a strong foundation for the youth of America and the future of food, fiber, and natural resource systems, and whereas FFA promotes premier leadership, personal growth, and career success among its members, and whereas agricultural education and FFA ensure a steady supply of young professionals to meet the growing needs in the science, business, and technology of agriculture. And whereas the FFA motto, learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, living to serve, gives direction and purpose to these students who take an active role in succeeding in agricultural education. And whereas FFA promotes citizenship, volunteerism, patriotism, and cooperation.
Therefore, I do designate the week of.
I'm sorry. Therefore, I do designate the week of February 22nd through the 29th, 2020 as National FFA Week.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're going to sign that?
You need a motion, Mayor?
And we'll do them both. Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
Second.
Yeah.
Both of us is in FFA, so we're glad to do this. Oh, well, good for you. Where are you?
Country boy, all right.
Country boy.
Oh, I'm
Why does
sorry.
everybody
I
laugh?
laughed out loud.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
You bored it.
This one's nice, too.
Oh, you want me to read this one too? Okay. National FF Week Proclamation. Whereas FFA and agricultural education provide a strong foundation for the youth of America and the future of food, fiber, and natural resources systems, and whereas FFA promotes premier leadership, personal growth, and career success among its members, and whereas Scott County High School FFA has been a longstanding part of Scott County's agricultural education, and with 104 members in the 2019-2020 school year. And whereas the FFA motto, learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, living to serve, gives direction and purpose to these students who take an active role in succeeding in agricultural education. And whereas FFA promotes citizenship, volunteerism, patriotism, and cooperation. Therefore, I do hereby designate the week of February 22nd through the 29th, 2020 as FFA Week in Georgetown, Scott County, Kentucky.
That's good enough to require 2 proclamations.
Do you need a motion on that one too?
Please. We
Second.
just started with a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Would you all like these proclamations for, we really appreciate your all.
Thank you.
Council.
Absolutely.
The next on the list for public comment is the red team. I think we have the red team right here in front of us. These young ladies, this red team has been nominated as a candidate for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society's Students of the Year campaign. So, please.
Well, first, we'd like to thank you for your time tonight, City Council, as well as my name is Reagan Oliver.
I'm Erin.
And I'm Diana. And with RED, we form Team Red, Leukemia Lymphoma Society.
To begin, LLS has made 19 out of 21 drugs for cancer treatments in the 2018, as of 2018. And not many drugs have been made ever since, so this is a big step for our campaign and to help people in need.
And LLS makes drugs not just for blood cancer, but for all types of cancer. So most likely, if you know someone that has cancer, LLS has helped them with their journey. The reason that LLS can focus on these research initiatives is because there is no preemptive care for blood cancer. It's just a ballpark of whoever gets it, and there's nothing that they can really do to provide preemptive treatment. So they focus all of their funds on treatments after you are diagnosed with blood cancer. And 60% of all pediatric cancer is, in fact, blood cancer. And since the 1980s, there has been 3 drugs made specifically for pediatric cancer patients with blood cancer. In most cases, these don't work, and so pediatric patients are forced to use adult treatments, which therefore deform them later in life just based on how harsh those treatments are. And so LLS in the next 5 years is doing something that's never been done before. They are doing a research initiative to actually focus on pediatric patients who have relapsed, and they are going to see what they can do to help them and develop one of the first pediatric drugs. We are also running this campaign in honor of my grandmother, Sharon Oliver. She was diagnosed with myeloma earlier this year on January 5th, and so she is our hero for our campaign and who we are running in honor of. In order to do this, we have been selling bracelets and the t-shirts that we are wearing right now, which we have made through the Scott County Marketing Department, as well as collecting sponsorships from companies like Pepe's and Spots that are local.
And so this Wednesday at Spots, from 6 to 9, they're doing a kind of like dine to donate. So 10% of whatever you buy there will go towards our campaign. And then we're also like working with other stores downtown to kind of get this started to where they can, whatever you buy, some of that comes to us.
And if you want that 10%, you do have to have a flyer, so
Yeah.
we made a bunch
So we
of
made a
print-offs
bunch
if
of them.
someone's interested in them.
Well, we would like to thank Mr. Prater for making February 29th the Blood Cancer Awareness Day, because that would be just a huge step on making how like cancer can affect someone's life, and just making that day, it means like that more people can know about it and possibly help resolve this in the future.
And so that is why we are called Leap for Leukemia, because February 29th is Leap Day. And so we thought it'd be a fun, gimmicky way of you remembering to keep those who have been battling blood cancer and are currently battling blood cancer in your hearts and mind during that day. And we also have flyers if you need to contact us through that. We have these. And so we'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Could you pass those around?
Just start with those
Yeah.
and
One of both?
Yes.
Sure.
Start them with,
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Second. Any questions about the
It's good to see the young people get involved, isn't it?
Amen. Yes, it is. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, young ladies. And we have a proclamation that's been approved, but we'll read it and present it to you.
Whereas the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society is working to change the lives of 1.2 million Americans living with a blood cancer, and whereas leukemia, lymphoma, and myeloma blood cancers will kill an estimated 56,700 people in the United States this year, and whereas the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, through voluntary contributions, is dedicated to finding cures for these diseases through research efforts and the support for those that suffer from them, and whereas more than 40% of new cancer treatment drugs approved by the FDA since 2005 started as blood cancer drugs but are now being applied to other forms of cancer. And whereas LLS funds life-saving blood cancer research around the world, provides free information and support services, and is the voice of all blood cancer patients seeking access to quality, affordable, coordinated care. Therefore, let it be known that I, Tom Prather, Mayor of the City of Georgetown, do hereby proclaim February 29, 2020 as Leap for Leukemia Awareness Day, and urge everyone to join with the LLS Scott County Students of the Year campaign and to remember those with blood cancer and to support their mission to cure blood cancer.
That was your motion, right, Paula?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
In my second.
And your second, thank you. Ladies. Good luck.
You can pick those up down there, your extra.
Thank you. Next on the list for public comment, Dwayne, you've got a hard act to follow, but please come forward.
High school students are always some of the best. So.
Now at both of them. So I'm hello guys, here just to ask for permission again for this year's race date. We have settled on the 19th of September as the best date for us. We've checked with Georgetown College, we've checked with Lori at Tourism, and so now you guys are on slate to hopefully move forward with that and follow up with anything you guys have and questions or things like this. This year we had about over 1,500 runners, so our biggest yet. So it keeps growing and keeps getting a little bit better every year. So we're really excited and very appreciate of all the support and city,
Is that
county, and
August
everybody.
19th?
Sorry?
September.
September 19th,
Ninth.
6 o'clock.
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
Thank you.
Accept it.
I'll second.
Dan seconded. Any questions?
You
If
always
not-
do a good job.
If not,
Thank you for what you do.
Thank
before
you.
I call the question though, Dwayne, you've omitted one big thing. Who's your sidekick?
Ah,
Oh, he's hiding
I
out.
recognize him.
my right-hand man, Charlie.
Hey, Charlie, thanks for coming. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you all.
Look forward to it, Dwayne. Thank you. Next on the public sign-in sheet, Mr. Stephen Price.
Town Council, Mayor Prather, good evening, and I want to say, I'm going to advance what I was going to say while the FFA people are still here. I was going to suggest to you, Mayor Prather, that in your dealings with Toyota, I heard you say last time we were here that you were planning a trip, to lead a trip to Japan to celebrate an anniversary of Toyota's involvement in Georgetown. Is that correct?
No, sir, it's our sister city relationship.
I'm sorry?
Sisters.
It is our sister city relationship.
Is that what it is? Yeah, right. Well, I met a guy today who had a New York had a leaking exhaust system. He was at the library, in the library parking lot. And whenever I see someone with a leaking exhaust making a lot of noise, I approach them and direct them to the parts store where they can buy muffler cement and muffler tape, put on the leak so it doesn't make any noise and they won't have fumes coming up in the vehicle. Well, the guy so I spoke to him. I approached the car. I said, hey, buddy, you got a muffler leak. You can go to the parts store, get you some muffler tape and muffler cement. And I said, by the way, you have a New York license plate, New York State. I said, what brings you to Kentucky? He said, hemp. He said, I've come down here to set up a textile mill using recently legalized hemp. And this maybe interests people in FFA and maybe interests the town council. If I were in a negotiating relationship with Toyota, given the overwhelming impact, negative impact of motor transport on Georgetown, I would say to Toyota, we would prefer that you change part of your production to textiles.
Steve, that's not our choice. That is not our choice, what somebody chooses to do in their business.
Well, if the town council passed a resolution, you could when you go to Japan, you could at least take it and show it to them. Say, we have enough cars, we need textiles, and now we have the legal materials to make the textiles with.
Go ahead and make your point. Go ahead and make your point.
Well, that is the point.
Okay.
While I was at the library today, I pulled up a quote from a book I happen to have, published by MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, written by a woman named Karin Weisterfeld. I think maybe I've quoted her book to you in the past. She says most of the modern problems, most modern day problems in Europe, she's from Europe, and worldwide, arise from the modern god of motorized mobility. And of course, Toyota is a part of that, and where they're drawing us into that. All of the problems, a steering wheel produces nothing except motion. And people's hands could be applied to production, as I said, of textiles using hemp. And the point I'm trying to make is that if I...
That's your point, Steve. You're out of time.
What's that?
You're out of time.
Out of time?
Yes, sir.
Well, I think, okay, I've made my point.
Thank you.
And maybe it's of interest to people in Future Farmers of America interested in horticulture, including hemp. Should be.
Thank you, Steve. That concludes all of the public comments for the evening. Just a couple of mayor's comments briefly. We continue to work on we can call it the needs analysis or the gap analysis that the council, most everyone has expressed interest in through our committee activity in determining how do we address the shortfalls that we've identified, and what will we propose to address those shortfalls, and what does that cost? We're still working on that. And I spent 3 hours on Friday with Stacy, Megan, and Andrew going through a number of scenarios that we've created, and working with a couple of department heads to hone those down to the most accurate scenarios that we can bring forward. That's what the committees have asked for, and that's what we're getting close to having finalized. I would anticipate then that we would first meet with the Finance Committee. We've made that commitment to them, but then follow that in quick succession with a meeting of each of the other 3 committees, Police, Fire, and Public Works. So every council member has an opportunity to review what these proposals, but not these proposals, but these analysis show that's necessary. And then if we can complete those committee meetings, then I would anticipate we would be ready to have some public discussion at the next council meeting of what those scenarios look like. But I want to make sure that we've correctly captured the departmental impacts that all of you all can help us with. So just as an update on where we are in that regard. With the Human Rights Commission, I'm still completing all of those appointments. I've had one person agree to serve on the board, and he's not in your packet tonight, and he's not up for appointment. But I have asked Matt Nunn to serve on the Fairness Committee, and he has agreed. And then we'll flesh that out hopefully by the next council meeting. Also in your seat tonight when you arrived, you should have found the documents for the revenue forecasting. That's a voluntary exercise for anybody that wishes to undertake that. It gives you a little sense of what the forecasting's all about and looking at the trends and making some determination of what you think those numbers should look like. It's helpful to us when we present when we're, Stacy and I are crafting the final budget, we actually go back and look through those responses and see how they group together. So if you wish to do that, that is available there.
Will we get a electronic copy like we did last time
Yes.
to fill out? Okay.
Stacy forwarded that late this afternoon. We're operating on a skeleton crew at City Hall. Everybody's homesick, and Stacy's among them. Megan's children are sick. So it's been one of those days getting ready. But you will receive that electronically as well.
And is there a deadline for that? Do we know yet?
Stacy asked for a response by, yes.
It'll be on the
It'll be in the
email she
email
sent?
that we
Okay.
send you. And that's all the mayor comments. Not even a chuckle, Connie.
I was trying to refrain myself from the FFA country boy.
Oh, goodness. Under GMWSS, Chase, it looks like you have a number of approval of purchase orders.
I'd like to start out by saying to the FFA and Team Red, excellent public speaking as well as your accomplishments. You're a tough act to follow up here. So, Mayor, I have 4 purchase orders for council consideration tonight. If it's okay with you, I'd like to run through all 4 and then answer any questions, if that's all right.
Please.
First 2 items A and B on the agenda are purchase orders to GRW Engineering. They're in the amount of $76,989.80 and $150,602.12. These are representative of invoices for the December and January billing periods for the design of the wastewater treatment plant number 1 expansion. As I think I said back, we noticed in the November invoice that the amounts of those invoices are increasing, and that is because we're in design now and we're bringing in all the different design disciplines, structural, architectural, MEP, site work. So these numbers are representative of more work being done on that process now that we're in full into design. Items C and D are both chemical purchases for wastewater treatment plant 2. First is for Evoqua Water Technologies in the amount of $48,870. That is for 40,000 pounds of our activated carbon. And then next is to Hexagon Technologies in the amount of $61,400, and that is for our 2,000 gallons of our phosphorus removal chemical, and both of those are sole supply chemicals.
Can I make a motion for all 4, Mayor?
You sure can.
Thank you.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Is there and seconded. Was that Mark?
Todd.
Oh, Todd.
Todd.
I'll get it right down there.
Yeah. Sorry.
Any questions for Chase?
All of these are budgeted items that we're looking at, so.
Yes, sir.
Or in the budget.
Yeah, it's the budget, so. amount of money's there.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Item 8, city attorney. Almost all of this has to do with our community development block grant that we received for the scattered site development over in the Boston neighborhood. Anytime we receive federal funds through a community development block grant, there are a lot of hoops to jump through. And thankfully, we have a very good consultant that's helping us make sure we get all these boxes checked. So Kevin's going to present us with a whole series of resolutions approving policies that are required for us to receive the block grant dollars.
Yeah, and you're right. We're lucky to have such a good consultant. I mean, obviously we're paying her, but she gives this to us with a bow on it, and we review it. So the first one is just an anti-displacement policy, basically indicating that we're going to be taking people from their homes to complete this work, and we're going to facilitate housing them in the meantime. The second one is the procurement standard we have to follow. We can't just follow our own procurement standard. It's generally the same, but it's if you read through it, just has different requirements that DLG mandates on this kind of a project. And then a cost overrun resolution, which of course we'll be doing the bidding and approving all of the contracts before we start any work. So we have a pretty firm handle on that regardless. And then the last one is a Section 3 affirmative action plan, applicable only to this project. Just requires us to get certain information from contractors, have a list of contractors to satisfy those minority requirements and things like that.
Can we take those as a group?
I have a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
One, on the resolution regarding the Boston budget funds cost overruns.
Mm-hmm.
How it reads, okay, the total grant, is it the $510,000? That's the total grant.
That's the total CDBG funding, and then we actually also got funding, part of our match was funded through another grant through Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Okay.
So our total, I think our actual total number of funds for the project is closer to like 750,000.
750,000.
Yeah.
So then, when it reads up here, it says City of Georgetown committed 30,000 in funds for the project.
Mm-hmm.
So we've committed that, was in the budget. But then the next line, whereas the City of Georgetown recognizes that it is responsible for providing or obtaining funds to cover cost overruns to complete the project.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
That means that to me, it means that if we mismanage our contracts
Right.
and sign up for too much, we're responsible for footing the bill, whereas we, of course, would only contract for lesser than the amount that the entire 750 comprises.
That's very open-ended. On the way it's written is extremely open-ended, that you could take a $750,000 project and ultimately it could end up being $1 million or $1.5 million project, and then we're responsible for taking care of the rest of the money, correct?
If that happened, I mean, this is a boilerplate. This is a box check. CDBG requires this, or they don't release our funds. Funds haven't been released to us yet. They're doing this from the standpoint that they're not going to be the one bound if a project, if a city mismanages and a project goes over, they're not going to be the one on the dotted line paying that. So, I mean, it obviously incentivizes us managing the contracts properly, and it disincentivizes people just continuing to contract and then placing that burden on the federal funding.
Yeah, on that gives me concern, because almost every project we ever do overruns the project a considerable amount. So that kind of gives me concern that there's nothing that says that we'll cover up to X amount of dollars of the overrun, instead of it being like a blanket, endless amount that we might cover or possibly could cover.
Could we put a cap on it at all? Would that be
No,
possible?
this is DLG requires this to release our funds.
I mean, I kind of see where Karen's coming from, because if it gets behind, you know, I mean, the meter still ticks.
Yeah,
And
but
We
we're
can
on the
deny
table
change
for it.
orders, though. I mean, these are different kinds of projects than like infrastructure projects.
exactly. I mean, these are remodeling individual homes, you know, kind of smaller, more modest type homes. So although there could be cost overruns on any of the particular homes, for it to be double would be our fault. I mean, somebody's going to be in charge of this. I don't know if it's Eddie or who, but.
Yeah, that's the question, who is in charge of it?
So our consultant is Chris Lowry, who's done these projects left and right. And my assumption, I've never worked on a CDBG to this point, but my assumption would be that, so we have a list of projects. So some of them are demo rebuild, some of them are rehab. My assumption would be that we're gonna be really conservative in how many contracts we enter into initially, because we have a substantial amount of time to spend the money, in my opinion, it's substantial, but we wouldn't go off and contract up to the 750. I think we
Right.
would contract, and then if there's extra money left at the end, number 4 or 5 on the list we say, okay, this is how much money we have left. We're probably not gonna get your whole rehab done. See what we can do based on the pool of money we have left. So it wouldn't be a situation where we would say, let's take this $750,000 and enter into contracts that add up to it.
That makes a lot more sense, that
Yeah.
you would spend it, build it as you've got it.
Right.
When you get a certain amount, you would stop at what you're doing.
Because-
And all the contracts will come to council for approval.
Right.
Okay, so as the contracts come here, we'll have an update
Yep,
on
tally.
where
How
the
much
money
money's
is
left
and how
and-
much money
yeah.
has been spent out at that.
And
Huh.
Kitty can correct me if I'm wrong, the Boston neighborhood can be put on the National Historic Register based upon housing, but with a lot of the older houses being torn down, and more specifically, historical houses being torn down, that window was closing. So, you know, that's the big part of this grant, to save, you know,
Historical.
a very vital part of Georgetown, to include the old cemetery on,
North Hamilton.
on North Hamilton Street.
Well, that's why we've been working on it for so long and going to all the meetings and
$750,000 is
doing
not
all of
a
it,
whole
so.
lot in the scheme of things.
It's
So
not, though.
how many houses are we planning on doing
9.
at this point in time? Do we know?
9.
9 of them.
They'll either-
And that's why it's scattered.
And we're displacing these folks, and they understand that at the time and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
it was a voluntary project, so everybody who's on the project list chose to sign up. Some dropped out over the course. I think we started with more like 13.
Okay.
And so some have dropped out, but all the contracts will come back to council for approval. We'll keep a running total on how much money is under contract, how much money's actually been spent.
How about with the displacement part of it? Won't that add up pretty quickly? Because didn't this say they could be displaced for like could be displaced for 3 years? Is that what that?
I'd be glad to
says?
ask Chris more about what kind of dollar amount works with that, but they're pretty,
I heard her give that answer. We rent equivalent or better apartments for people, and we pay moving expense.
'Cause
This is intended to help the
Yeah,
residents.
because that would add up quickly as a part of.
That's all budgeted.
A part of that. Okay.
That's all budgeted. This is, again, it's boilerplate language. It's not a blank check proposition. If we're gonna rehab 9 houses, I don't think we're gonna blow up a budget by double.
Okay. Well, anything.
Just don't think we are. But that's
Historically.
what we can either sign it,
Government
we can either
does.
take the grant or not.
I'll take the grant, but historically, government does override, and I just wanted a protection of something.
There is none.
That in case we do.
But if it's
There
coming
is
back to
none.
council, that's protection enough.
this is one of these, we don't have any bargaining power, but we can certainly track the
Yeah.
costs
Well, it's
really
great,
closely.
it's great to get the fund, but how do you pick the homes? How do you pick, or do they do that, Tom?
They volunteered,
Okay.
and then they're subject to a point analysis based
Yeah.
on their home
Okay.
and their income.
Okay,
And they had to score high enough.
Okay.
This is all completely
right,
transparent,
right.
done
I
by
was just curious on how
scores.
they did that, though.
And they ranked them, Marvin, so if anybody falls off the list for a change of circumstances or a change in need, they can go down on the list and
Bump
move
them
people
one back.
back up.
Okay.
Yeah.
We think at this point 9 people are gonna have their houses improved.
Well, that's good.
It could be one more, but we've got to play it out and see. I was going to make sure that our students knew this grant is, she picked it up now, it's about $500,000 of a community development block grant. The match was going to be $250,000 for the city, but we went out and we asked for another grant that would pay our match, and we got a $220,000 grant toward the $250,000. So we're able to do a lot of good in the community for a relatively small amount of cash from the city
right.
council.
Do you need a motion?
We also had a consultant that we're having to pay. I need to fess up about that. Yes, a motion for,
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Mayor. Oh, I can have it, that's fine.
yeah, this all of them?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. If there are no further questions about those 4 resolutions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Resolution approving a new access point on the bypass, which is where? Oh,
He's just gonna step out.
you're gonna step out? Okay.
Llewellyn.
Deals with the development he was
He was on.
Oh,
party
okay.
to.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the right-in, right-out at Walmart.
No, this is
No, it's
the
the-
right in, right out at the new development.
Oh, that's right.
The
Yeah, the
interchange we just got
Halls.
put
Yeah.
That Welch.
intersection.
Not bad. You just need a motion? Or you gotta read it?
Well, for a little background, so Matt Summers actually is responsible for pointing this out, and it was news to me. Apparently in 1986, there was an ordinance passed indicating that all new access points on the southern portion of the bypass had to come back to council for approval. So I added the language in there just so folks could see. I didn't include the ordinance, but, so Matt brought that to my attention and said, hey, we found this ordinance. Can you take this for a resolution to council? So that's why we're here.
Yeah, well, you had a pretty radical mayor in 1986.
I didn't think it was you. I thought I saw another name.
It may have been.
I
I
think it
came
was-
in later in 86. No, it would have been Pollock.
Pollock,
Sam
yeah, Sam Pollock, that's who it was. Yeah.
All right, so I've got a question before you get started. You said did you say the southern border of the
Just
bypass?
the southern half.
So what would that be?
From old Kmart all the way around.
460, right?
Yeah.
I think that's how it was defined, yeah.
So from 460 all the way over to 25? Is that
460 to
considered?
460.
Yeah, probably would keep going.
460 to 460?
Yes, all the way over.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I think there's some big infrastructure issues that the council correctly has asked for some input on. And this would be one of those examples.
Right.
That's good.
We don't grant those kind of road cuts without discussion and a council. So, would you like to read? Who's going to read?
it's just a resolution.
We don't have to.
You
Motion.
don't have to read it
We
if you
don't
don't
have
want
to
to.
read. Is there a motion? Thank you.
Constable.
Motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. Thank you, Todd.
All right, I've got one more question if I could.
Sure.
We're approving the right in, right out. But as far as the actual cost, that's going to be picked up by the
Right.
developer.
The developer.
That's correct.
No cost here.
We're just authorizing that change in traffic pattern. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item F on the agenda is just almost a housekeeping thing. First reading of an amendment that'll creating an IRS regulations rolling conformity so that we don't have to, we adopt the IRS regulations that are in place today and we enact a provision where we adopt rolling conformity as they do new resolutions. We can approve them every time, but this was actually a recommendation of the Revenue Commission, I believe.
Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance amending Chapter 17, Article 2 of the Georgetown Code of Ordinances to provide for rolling conformity with the Internal Revenue Code. Summary 1. Amend Section 1716 of the Georgetown Code of Ordinances regarding occupational license taxes to define Internal Revenue Code to mean the version of the code that exists as of December 31st of the year in which taxes are due. 2. Provides for an effective date upon passage and publication. Publicly introduced and read for the first time February 24th, 2020.
So that would be first reading. We'll try to be ready for second reading at the next meeting. And if there are any questions, either Scott Hall of the Revenue Commission or Andrew is pretty well versed on this, and I'll take a stab at it. Thank you. Under Finance, and again, Stacy just could not be here today, tonight. We didn't want her here tonight. But we have a second reading of the amendment to the budget ordinance.
An ordinance amending the annual budget ordinance for fiscal year July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2020. Summary, General Fund. Prior year revenues are increased by $186,600. Intergovernmental revenue is increased by $85,000. General government expenses are increased by $34,000. Police expenses are increased by $25,500. Interlocal expenses are increased by $57,100. Capital expenses are increased by $155,000. Grant fund. Federal grant revenues are increased by $437,550. State grant revenues are increased by $261,920. CDBG revenues are increased by $510,000. Police department expenses are increased by $7,550. Community services are increased by $1,201,920. Environmental Services Fund, sanitation expenses are increased by $33,500. All ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance are hereby repealed. This ordinance shall take effect after its passage and publication according to law. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Publicly introduced and read for the first time February 10th, 2020. Publicly read the second time February 24th, 2020.
Motion for approval, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll second it, Megan.
Seconded. Are there questions? If not, shall we call the roll?
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Saints?
Yes.
Mrs. Lusby Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Lusby?
Yes.
Mrs. Singer Erdley?
Yes.
Thank you. That carries and passes. Before I get to number 10, something I intended to mention under Mayor's comments. Hopefully, when you came in the front door, you may have noticed the construction going on in the clerk's office.
Good to see.
We are really proud of that. We've needed a secure transaction window in the clerk's office for a long time. We submitted for, I think, 2 Homeland Security grants to get it done. This last year, you included a little bit of money for security upgrades in City Hall and Public Works with their own guys and their own construction expertise have built, framed an addition in Tracy's office where you can come in off the hallway, access the transaction window, and then there'll be a secure door added into their office. So finally, the clerk can do transactions and interact with the public, but not have to have people have full access to her office. And something that's been a long time coming, and we're pretty excited about it.
Really excited about it.
So drop in one day when they're working, and that's
lets us
going
in.
on right now.
She lets us in.
That's right. Through the window.
Let's see. So item 10 is Fire Department. Eric, come on up. You have a resolution to apply for a grant?
Yes, we would like to apply for a FEMA AFG grant, the amount of $33,000 total. Be a $3,000 match on our part for ballistic equipment to get us compliant with NFPA 3000 hostile active shooter type of incident responses. So.
Motion.
Second. Seconds everywhere. And if there are no questions for the chief, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Well, I got you also, just a reminder, Saturday night, come out and watch a little basketball action at Great Crossing High School, 6 p.m. So should be a little
city and the county.
Little fun event. So.
Saturday night?
And-
Yes.
And I understand that Eric is the center for our
I'm starting center.
city.
So.
The beast.
10 rebounds. And
If they fall on the ground.
At least 5 block shots.
He blocked his own shot.
Let's see, and that gets us through the printed part of the agenda and down to council comment. Tammy, could we start with you?
Yes. I have had several people, because of where I live, who have either called or come by to express concern about the zone change for South Broadway and Clinton Avenue. Some of the things that they have said is that they worry about additional congestion, parking, the dangerous crosswalks that we already have, and the fact that an eightplex is out of character with the rest of the housing in the area. And I just wanted to go ahead and bring it up here. I know I encouraged them to go to the planning and zoning meeting. Some were able to. I was not able to because I was at a parks meeting. But I just wanted to share it here because it may come here eventually.
And is it going to come here?
No.
I didn't think it was.
It's not a zone change, it's just an application for development, so.
Okay.
So we won't
So
have
the existing zoning will accommodate some level of residential density there. I think the question's gonna be how many units? It doesn't come back to the council, Tammy, because they
It's
already
not
have the
a-
zone
okay.
change they need,
Okay.
and we do zone change.
I misunderstood then.
So, it,
The video of the meeting, I didn't attend, but, it seemed like it was a lot back and forth, but it went through on a preliminary approval.
Right.
And the holdup was solely stormwater.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, yeah.
Whether or not they could show that it would not significantly contribute to the existing stormwater problem. So they're
That'd
gonna
be
go
tough
back,
hurdle.
do the engineering analysis, and they're gonna come back for another planning commission approval.
There's no way is that not where the city could step into that, because stormwater, I mean, we have fought Bradshaw for how many years, and the stormwater through there? I mean, it's obvious that putting anything on that's gonna increase stormwater
Well, Karen,
problems on that.
you and I may say that, and everybody in this room may say that, but there are engineers out there, and there was an engineer there that night. I was in attendance for the meeting. And, there's an engineer that represents the developer of this particular lot that is saying that they can deal with it. I mean, they know that they're gonna have to deal with that.
Well, the engineer that did Bradshaw said that what we did at Bradshaw would.
I understand, I understand. So I guess the engineer for planning and zoning is gonna have to be the one that looks into it and kind of confirms it on behalf of the community, whether that plan and the statistics or whatever the analysis they provide will meet that criteria. The other thing that I noticed that night is that everyone that was there, I guess, was in opposition to it. But they didn't have a whole lot to hang their hat on, because the property is already technically zoned appropriately for that type of development. There weren't that many people there from your neighborhood or from Broadway. Nothing compared to what I've seen for other significant issues that impacted the downtown area. They just, for whatever reason, maybe they had other things going on, but again, there were people there, maybe 10 or 12, I don't know. I'm sure they have a record of how many people spoke out. Every one of them was in opposition to it. But this goes back to something that quite honestly, we've talked about, and I've brought up when planning and zoning has been here, is the fact that we don't have any architectural standards for some of the main corridors downtown, whether it be Broadway or Main Street. And I know this is something that's been talked about many years ago.
Right.
And back then, as I recall, there were concerns. I mean, there were concerns from both perspectives. We all want to have a beautiful downtown that looks appropriate and is well-suited, but we don't want to hamstring somebody that owns a home on Main Street or Broadway from being able to replace a window or doing something to their house that should make sense, but you got a committee or a board over here that says, oh no, we don't want that. We want something that nobody can afford, so very little gets done. So there needs to be some balance. There needs to be something in place, I think, and I'm glad you brought this up. And we need, and Devin and I have talked about this recently. She knows that I was in attendance that night at the meeting for another matter altogether, but it gave me an opportunity to hear the dialogue and what was being said, and seeing the concern from our citizens. I feel like it's our responsibility to do something. I'm not saying just today on this particular piece.
Right.
Maybe we can, maybe we can't. I don't know. I don't know legally what can be done. But Ben Krebs, I guess, is the engineer that's going to be looking at and reviewing this situation. But I say, and maybe we need to vote on it, Mayor, I don't know what we need to do, but we need to get planning and zoning to come up with an overlay for downtown that we can all agree and live with. Maybe we can't all agree on it, but something that I guess is palatable to the community. And I'm sure other communities have done this. Devin and I talked about that too, and maybe I heard that Danville, you and I haven't talked about this, but maybe I heard Danville may have a plan in place that we might want to try to somehow replicate.
Just for certain districts.
Exactly, exactly. Because I asked the question, some of you were on the council when I brought this up, but O'Reilly's Auto Parts, they built a pretty generic looking building right here on Broadway, US 25. And I asked the question, I said, why is the one in Frankfurt so much nicer? Well, because Frankfurt required it.
Yeah.
I think maybe some of you all remember that. And then there have been some other buildings built on Broadway and even on Main Street. I know that we had some dialogue. And someone's opinion of what looks nice may not be our opinion of what looks nice. They're gonna put brick on it. Okay, wonderful. They put a modern-looking brick that doesn't really fit into downtown, but never mind, they put brick on it, so they, they satisfied us, yeah. So something more appropriate needs to be in place, and I'll do whatever I can to help see this through, but we've talked about it, I've talked about it long enough, and I'm ready to, maybe we all are, maybe we're all ready to get serious about it and put something in place to protect the community and the homeowners that are impacted by things that perhaps shouldn't happen.
I think we've talked about this for the past 5 years
Yeah.
since I've been on, and I think there comes a time to talk and there comes a time to take action. And I think we're past the talking point.
Yeah.
So you can talk or you can take action. And we were all on the comp, or many of us were on the comp plan. And I
Yeah.
think, it's one thing to set up here and say whatever, but if we're gonna take action, we need to take action or not.
Yeah.
And move on.
So when you take action, that means we gotta get people involved, and they've
Exactly.
actually gotta do work, and we may have to pay somebody that isn't on staff, because staff can be kind of busy, they're tied up with other things that are going on. So, maybe we need to bring in a consultant, I don't know, and that's where I'll let the mayor and your staff, and planning and zoning, Devin and Andrew.
If
David,
you'd like,
and this
I mean,
one-
the
Advise.
easiest first
Advise
step
us.
would be to, and I always say this answer, but to look at how other similar jurisdictions do it,
Absolutely.
and just put together a little matrix, and if that ends up being going down the road of a consultant, but that's the first,
Okay.
easiest thing we can do, I think, is.
And this
just
is
get
one
some
of the
examples.
things that fits right into what I was talking about, updating all the subdivision regs and including all that,
Yep.
And if one of the things that we can look at putting in there is if you come into the city of Georgetown and you set up a new subdivision or development, an acre of land has to be donated to the city of Georgetown for a fire station. You're gonna put up 400 homes, we want a fire station in that neighborhood. Or we want the land with the capability of building that. So as it expands, we don't have to go out and buy land later, it's already given to us, so.
That's a good point. It's been sorely lacking, and we keep hearing it over and over, and we just have to do it.
So,
In conclusion,
That's your
Yeah.
conclusion. Moving on.
Tammy, if I could respond to
yes, please.
some of the things that have been said. We have been talking specifically about a review of the subdivision regulations
Right.
for about 6 months.
Right.
And I agree, we want to do something, but I can guarantee you that we want to take this slowly and thoughtfully. And the idea of taking action just because it's time to quit talking and do something is not the way to approach something of this magnitude.
I don't think that would
What
happen
we
because
have-
it's taken
if I
5 years
could
to get a
continue,
right in and
please.
right out.
If I could continue, please.
I don't think it's gonna happen that quick.
I'm sorry, you finished?
I'm done.
Thank you. We believe that, we know that the fiscal court shares the same concerns that the city council does about the limitations that you have in zoning decisions. And we've discussed, Todd and I have discussed this at some length, that the council is uncomfortable with the fact that once they give up their zoning decision, you have no more say-so about a project from that point to its conclusion. And we've determined that probably the subdivision regulations are where those need to be addressed. I have asked Planning and Zoning to bring us a proposal on what it would cost to do a complete review of the subdivision regulations, including hiring a consultant back, Todd, when we first talked about it. In a recent council meeting, I've reminded Matt that I'm still waiting on that proposal to come back to us. We are in the process of scheduling an interlocal committee meeting. There are 3 magistrates and 3 council members that sit with me and the judge on an interlocal committee. We've been trying to get a meeting scheduled for about 3 weeks, and it's really difficult to overlay those schedules. there are three things that the judge and I have discussed that will be on that interlocal committee agenda. The first is to do a necessary periodic review of all the interlocals to make sure they're signed correctly, filed correctly, and we don't get into the mess that we had about 5 or 6 years ago on that issue. The second issue is because the council and the court share this concern, we have asked that on the date we hold that interlocal committee meeting, that Joe Kane be there to discuss this with the court and the council, so we can begin to understand the magnitude of the project and how we should best approach it in a unified approach with county government. And when that comes out of the interlocal committee, we'll be able to have more to report to the council. The third thing we want to talk about that I've put on this call is the interlocal funding formula that we use. I want to have a deeper conversation about the way we allocate interlocal agreement cost. So that is where we are on subdivision regulations. That has been pretty aggressively pursued since we determined that subdivision regulations was the tool that city council really needed to have. I don't know what the final action was, but I understood that the staff recommendation for the property you were asking about was that it be decreased to 6 units. Is that correct?
You know, I wasn't there, but I did hear that. Kitty, you were there. Oh, you weren't there, okay.
David?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what staff recommended, but they showed 2 plans, and one of them had the 8-plex divided into 2 different buildings as well. And the location of the parking was also debated, whether it be in the front or the back. So it does go back to planning and zoning, but not until they're ready to present the stormwater information.
So, these concerned citizens would need to show up at that next hearing. Is that correct? Because that's where it will be decided. I mean, I know it was zoned for business because Ashland filling station was there forever, and I don't think it's ever changed.
Yeah, it's R2 now.
Yeah, I mean, it's CVS, they talked about CVS coming there at one point, and that, you know, there's some residents who said even, well, a 8-plex would be better than a drugstore, traffic-wise.
It's not zoned commercially, though.
It's not anymore?
It's
Okay.
it's zoned residentially.
Okay.
Drove by there today, Tammy, and I was kind of struck by the fact that the entire block from one street to the other street is either this property, which is being proposed for multi-units, the house next door that we know is multi-unit, and Gar School.
Right.
That's it.
That's the block.
There is no traditional residential on this block.
Right. It's true.
I'm not saying I want an 8-plex there. but
I know. It's
it struck me
tough.
today that the entire block is a school and multifamily.
Right.
And most
Kind of
projects
behind it's not. You've got on the backside, the Hamilton side, you've got
Of course, you got homes
the
there.
layers, and there's 2
Yeah.
others that are there on the backside, and then the school.
But obviously something everybody's interested in.
Right.
So, anything else, Jim?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right, Mark? Okay.
I had an email from the gentleman that's working on the sidewalk up on South Broadway that we've talked about a couple of times. He has contacted with Eddie. Eddie's been working with him and trying to get approval, whether he needed a bond, a permit, all that.
Pulled a permit. Eddie updated me this afternoon.
Yes.
Everybody's
So
in the
he's
right
on
direction.
he's on the right track now, I think, to get it done. So he wanted to let me know to
He's not happy with,
let the council
he's
know.
not happy with the city because he had a bad experience with the contractor and he thinks we should protect him from those experiences. But anyway, beyond that, he is gonna fix the sidewalk.
He talked to me about that too, but then he was a little frustrated on what he needed to do to get this next, but I think he's on the right path now to get it fixed, and I think his intentions are to get it fixed. So, and then another question, you made the comment about the construction for the city clerk. Someone also said that you were gonna cut, is this true or not, I don't know. Are you cutting off access to the second floor without, is there any kind of security access that changing on the second floor?
when we review these security packages, that's very possible.
As it won't be able to get to the second
You'll
floor?
have to be buzzed up to the second floor.
All right, Arlene would do that, and
Again, we're still getting proposals and going to review those. It is not appropriate for anyone that walks in off the street to have unfettered access to the second floor.
I agree with that.
And
but
that's
it
not,
does-
that doesn't happen in any city around here. If you go to City Hall anywhere around us, in this day and age, you do not have unfettered access to an elevator throughout the entire building.
Right.
That's,
It
it's
just does seem, I mean, I don't know what your proposals are gonna be, but it just does seem a little bit to, like setting access, the mayor having, people not having access, general access to the mayor kind of thing, where they have to be buzzed through, buzzed up. It's not that kind of open door policy, which,
it still can be an open door policy, but.
Just gotta let them open the door.
Yeah, I can't imagine someone not understanding that.
it seems like it's not as friendly doing business with the citizens, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We'll figure out what you're gonna do with it.
Again, we're hearing from proposals. Hopefully, everybody's in favor of us being safe.
Yeah.
I hope that that's a
This time,
standard we
yes.
can hold to.
Are you feeling threatened from somebody or something going on?
There's always
We have
somebody
angry
threatening
people come
somebody
in
down here.
frequently.
Take, for
Yeah.
instance, the police department. You can't get past the lobby there.
Well, I know, but you all will shoot them there.
Oh, This
Question
should be
answered.
even more, this building should be even more secure.
I
Chief would shoot somebody.
Girls, y'all hear that?
I love it.
Restricted access to the building is absolutely in these plans.
Well, even us being safe up here, somebody come in that's mad or aggravated.
Yeah.
You know, and hide something. I mean,
You get
somebody
somebody
can come in
speak
here.
and goes
We're
off
not
on us.
strip searching anybody or patting
I
them
don't
down.
think we have any protection though, really.
Huh?
We don't
Come
really
on.
have any protection.
How
though.
about David? Take a bullet.
The bossy, but.
I'm saying.
Connie?
Connie,
No, Mayor, thank you.
Fortunately, we've got a lot of good security here.
I agree.
At each and every meeting, so. that's
When
good.
Chet Bradley used to be here, there used to be.
That was good security. Yeah, that was good security.
How y'all know I'm not?
Ooh.
Because your purse is too small.
You can't see by here.
Mayor, I want to thank the high school students tonight for being here. You all did a very impressive job.
Really? Thank you.
Thank you all. That's really it, Mayor. I look forward to our finance meeting.
Yes.
I guess we're going to have one before the next council meeting. Is that what I
In fact,
understand?
David, I really think we need to have all four committees meet before the next council meeting.
Okay.
You all, Finance Committee needs to go first, then the others need to go in sequence.
Okay. I've got some availability during the day for the next couple of weeks, so
Okay,
we'll be good.
good. Mark?
And I'm always flexible.
I'm back what David said. Thank you all for coming tonight. FFA, I was in that club, and you girls did a great job too, so thank you all.
And I will ditto that. Thank you all for coming and learning a little bit about our civic government. I did have a few questions. On the recycling, I had asked about paper, if they would be taking paper in Georgetown. Is that going to be possible?
It is not.
It's not possible. Okay, so no paper, even though Lexington's doing it?
Lexington, it turns out, is doing that under a separate contract. They cannot run it through their recycling center, which is
Okay.
where all of our flow goes.
Okay,
They're only collecting it in those special boxes.
those special yellow boxes.
So
Okay.
they won't accept ours.
Okay, so no paper for us. And then on the West Main TAP grant, where are we on that? For the West Main viaduct, where?
Waiting for a decision for Frankfurt.
For Frankfurt, okay.
They had as is pretty typical change of administration, they had a big backlog.
Yeah.
So any idea?
Priorities change and they push those kind of decisions down, and we hope to hear decisions. And
So we're waiting.
The last decision, two decision points are they gonna give us the money, and are they gonna approve our proposed method of fixing the bridge, which
Okay.
historic folks are pushing back on.
Okay.
They want us to think about the fact that it is originally a dry stack bridge.
Mhm,
and
which it is.
We're proposing to put some mortar in the to stabilize it in there, giving us great equipment.
And the signage proposal too.
But the
But that's,
Yeah.
the project will move without that.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
our design is essentially finished. I mean, as
Okay.
soon as they rubber stamp the funding for the viaduct, it
Mhm.
should be bid to construction.
Okay, so that's what we're waiting on.
Hurry
just
up and
waiting on
wait.
those. Hurry up and wait, okay. And then kind of connected to that, I walk in Royal Spring Park a lot, and there's just been a tremendous amount of trash. Is there any way we can get Public Works just to kind of scope by every week and pick it up? Because especially by the DAR monument on the hill, there were like clothes and bags, and it was just nasty.
Either-
I was afraid to pick it up myself,
No, you shouldn't.
you know.
You shouldn't.
Like,
Sure, either Public Works or Parks and
Okay,
Rec.
yeah, if
have
they
to Pay a little
could.
more attention to it.
Yeah, because it's kind of such a treasure of our city. So that's it.
Thank you. Todd?
Only one thing, March the 5th, 6 o'clock, 6:30.
I believe so, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock at the County Extension Office. The FFA alumni is having a chili supper, silent and live auction. Is the Bluegrass Band gonna be there?
I'm not sure. I wasn't at the last one.
Okay, I'm not sure either, but in the past, we've had Jim Calloway and his Bluegrass Band that plays. All money that is raised at that chili event goes to support 3 FFA chapters in Scott County, which we do have 3. Scott County, Great Crossings, and Royal Springs. And they all 3 do amazing work. And, you know, Scott County and Great Crossings took a hit when they got split in half. And the kids have just done tremendous in taking a chapter that was split in half and bringing it back up, and, you know, Great Crossings starting what they're from square one. So I have to give all 3 chapters a great pat on the back for that. They've done a wonderful job. So
It's a great organization.
March 5th, come out to the chili supper.
At
It's
6
great.
o'clock?
6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Anything else, Todd? No. Anything else to come before the council? If not, we will stand adjourned. Thanks, folks.